Elementary music teacher friend, you love what you do, but you might feel unappreciated and, in fact, unseen some days. You may even feel like you're on a music teacher island and just want to connect with other music teachers who can relate to both your struggles and wins when it comes to teaching elementary music. I get you and understand completely the feelings you're having. That's why each and every week, the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast will provide you with solo and guest episodes that will help you realize you're not alone in your music teaching journey. Throughout each episode, my goal is for you to be able to walk away with actionable steps and ideas to help you feel like you're ready to take on the new week with whatever challenges may be thrown your way. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Peresta, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're at home, in your car, in the shower, or wherever else you're listening, grab your cup of coffee or whatever other beverage is nearby and listen in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast.
I'm Chris Dutchko, co-host of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey music teacher friend, I want to let you know about a free guide called 5 Steps to Simplifying Your Lesson Planning. We know as an elementary music teacher how stressful it can be planning lessons every single week for all the grade levels you teach that need to meet the state or national standards, that will reach different learning styles, and that are also fun and engaging for your students. If you've had thoughts like, am I doing this whole lesson planning thing right? Then check out this guide. It will help you with lesson planning with ease. So simply head to subscribe.thedomesticmusician.com/simplifying lesson planning, or check out the link in the show notes. Happy 2023. This is the first episode of the new year, and I am so excited to bring the podcast back every single week. I had to take a break from doing that while I wrapped up grad school. I just earned my master's in educational technology, and I am really excited to use what I learned in my online business and with you, music teacher. So 2023 is off to a great start. And like I said, the podcast is coming back every week. You're going to see more content on my blog, and you're also going to see some new free trainings coming up this year, challenges, workshops. So be on the lookout for that, because there's a lot behind the scenes going on when it comes to planning in the domestic musician. And I can't wait to announce some new and exciting opportunities coming your way soon. This episode is a recap episode. Every year, somewhere towards the beginning of the year, I did not have an episode come out last week. As you see, there is an off week because the podcast had been coming out every other week. But towards the beginning of every year, I like to do a recap episode. There's been some years where I have taken snippets from certain episodes and kind of replayed them in an episode, in the recap episode. And there's been some years I have just talked through what was recorded during that previous year. And so I kind of like to change it up every year. But today's episode, instead of going back through every single episode from 2022, I'm going to recap the 10 most downloaded episodes. Now, it was really hard for me to narrow this down because there were some that was like one download from being in the top 10 list or something like that. So I would really encourage you, if you are new to the podcast or you have maybe listened to some episodes, but it's been a while since you've listened to other ones, I would encourage you to just go back and look at episodes, maybe all the way back from the beginning. But if that's too much, then go back and look through 2022. Now, I want to give you a little trick. If you're like, I don't have time to go search through all of the episodes, if you go to my website, thedomesticmusician.com, click on the podcast tab at the top. And when you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see a podcast feed. And it always has the first episode. It says, check out the episodes. And then it says you can search for a specific topic and check out the show notes too. So when you, at the top of that section, it'll have the latest episode. So you will be seeing this one at the top at the time of this recording. Right under that, you'll see where it says search episodes. If you click on that and you put in any search term, let's say classroom management, for example, it'll show you the episodes I have recorded about that topic. Now, hopefully it does it correctly and it'll show you everything. But if not, if you ever have a question about an episode or a topic that you're really wanting to hear some advice or professional development about in your earbuds, just send me a direct message. Literally, just shoot me a message at Jessica Peresta on Instagram, or if you're on Facebook, just find me, my page, The Domestic Musician, and message me there and just ask, do you have any episodes or blog posts around this topic? And I will definitely send you to the right episode or blog post. It'd just be a super quick chat back and forth. But that's what I want you to do. Find topics that you need, because what you need is not ever going to be what another music teacher needs. And so if you are searching for episodes around classroom management, there's also blog posts about classroom management on the blog, and there's a search tab there as well too. If you need help finding any of that, please just let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you. So when it comes to 2022, or any year, I love doing a recap episode, because even for myself, it is so neat for me to be able to go back through the year and see what episodes were put out there, to see the amazing guests I got to have conversations with and the solo episodes I got to record. And it is so awesome to me to be able to see. Spotify does this Wrapped. You probably see it even with the music you listen to. But that just to be able to see the many countries, yes, like countries around the world, of who in those countries are listening to the podcast. And I am just so encouraged. And that's what drives me forward and keeps me going with recording episodes and with providing content each and every week, because, well, not the last couple months, but normally every week, because of the fact that I know it's needed. And I know that it's not about me. It never has been, but being able to serve you in a big way and being able to provide content where you can listen on the go is definitely a goal of mine. I've also listened to feedback before we get into the top 10 episodes. I know this is getting a little wordy, but I've listened to feedback about wanting shorter episodes moving forward. And I hear you. I'm that way. When I go on Apple Podcast, that's where I listen to podcast, and I like to listen in my car most of the time, and usually when my kids aren't in there so I can hear. But anyways, I look for episodes that are between 20 and 30 minutes, because if it's an hour, I may start it, but I may forget to go back later, or I'll just kind of be like, man, this is too long. I don't feel like listening to this. So I hear you, and moving forward into this year, even guest episodes, I'm trying my best to keep them no longer than 30 minutes. So yay for that. All right, so let's move into the top 10 downloaded episodes of 2022. Like I said, though, make sure you check out all the episodes, because they were all amazing. All of them. The guest episodes, the guests that came on providing their time to speak to you. Please go listen to their episodes, because the greatest way to thank a guest, or to even thank me for a solo episode, is by listening, sharing an episode that you find valuable and relevant, posting it to social media, email it out to a friend. Those are ways to help spread the word about my podcast, which helps the reach grow even more to teachers that are listening or that need the content. And also, I would love for you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I think Spotify has a way now for you to leave reviews as well, and a rating, because it helps the podcast get found in the search, and it gets the podcast recommended more to people looking for a podcast to listen to. All right, so let's jump right in. The first most downloaded episode, and I'm going in kind of chronological order, so these aren't in order of download numbers, but chronologically. So episode 186 is an episode about a 45-minute class period breakdown. There's also a blog post that goes along with this, and if you click on the show notes, you'll see that blog post listed there, or just go to the blog, at the Domestic Musician, and just type in 45-minute, and you'll see that blog post pop up. But the reason I wanted to record this episode, and this is a solo episode, is because I know you each have different class lengths. You have different times that you see your classes. Some are 30 minutes once a week. Some of you see your classes twice a week. Some of you for an hour, some every day, some every other day, some 3 times a week, 2 times a week, once a week. It's totally different across the board. So it's impossible for me to record an episode about all those different varying situations. But what I did was I based it on the average of how long you might see your students. So when you listen to this episode about what to do during a 45-minute period, I want you to kind of think about your situation and how you can apply the advice I'm giving in the breakdown of a class period to your situation, and just kind of get some ideas of what you can do there. So in this episode, I talked about various factors to consider of what to do if you see your students for 45 minutes, what your teaching situation might be like, and the different needs of your students. And I kind of go through what to do during a 45-minute class period, from the minute the students walk in, transitions in the music room, activities you can try, and then what to do when your class is ready to leave. So if you're needing kind of some advice around what to do with your students in a 45-minute class period, this is the episode for you. The next episode is episode 188, and this one is about trusting your intuition. I sometimes will have podcasts outlined and I know what topics, and I'll go back through and outline what I'm wanting to talk about. I always just do bullet points. I never read word for word. Some podcasters do that. That's just not my style. I like to just talk off the cuff. But there's sometimes an episode will just be on my heart, and I had something else scheduled maybe for episode 188, and I just sometimes will want to share something on my heart, so I'll pivot and move things around. That's what happened with this episode, and I never in a million years thought it would get as popular as it did, and I got more messages probably about this podcast episode than any other in 2022. And so that's the thing. I never know what's going to be a hit, what's going to be a miss when it comes to podcast episodes, but sometimes I just want to share what's on my heart. So trusting your intuition, this came from the fact that I had several conversations, and I always do, ongoing conversations with music teachers, and it is sometimes easy to doubt yourself. It's easy to hear all the advice around you and go to professional development and workshops and trainings and orphan Kodály levels and all those things. Those are all amazing and needed, and keep doing it. But what happens is a lot of times you will just get stuck on the training part of it, in the getting taught part of things, but you never move into the implementing part. You never trust that you have what it takes to teach music to your students. And it's hard to go from applying what you've learned into action. So this episode really does break down what to do when it comes to teaching a lesson, classroom management strategies, assessing your students, planning ideas, putting on performances, and how to do that while trusting your own intuition and that you have what it takes to teach your students, because you're the only one that can teach your students the way you do. And then episode 191 is the next one, and it's building a music program from the ground up with Natasha Perrine. She and I met a couple years ago, and I want to say it was through Instagram, but just we had shared stories of how we got started teaching elementary music. And not only that, we both taught in similar circumstances, low income school, not a lot of resources, not a lot of budget, building a program from the ground up. And I love her perspective around this topic. So I knew I wanted to have her on the podcast to talk about it. She found herself at a school where she was responsible for building a music program, basically, like the title says, from the ground up. And I know that this is not just her and I shared experience, but it's a shared experience of a lot of music teachers who you are never told in college that you may start with nothing, that you may start with no instruments, no budget, no materials to teach with, and you're just like, go do it. And so it's very tough. And so we have a conversation all around this. We talked about the fact that you can't give up. why it's about trial and error and continuing to keep going even on those hard days, and the importance of being yourself. So, in a lot more in that conversation. But if maybe you've never found yourself in this situation yet, but you know that you one day might, or you see a job opening about a music program, and of course you don't know the situation fully until you get in there and you get going, but you're feeling kind of stuck in this area and how to move forward, then I would definitely advise you to listen to this episode because it was awesome. There are also previous episodes on the podcast about my experience with starting a school. Not a school. I didn't start a school. Starting a music program at a school that had been non-existent for 7 years. So go back and you can find those episodes on the podcast as well. The next episode I want to turn your attention to is episode 192, and it's about assessment in elementary music. Now, I do have episodes coming up in 2023, more about assessment and data and things like that. So be on the lookout for those. But this episode is, I kind of go into why assessment in music class is different than general education classes like math and reading, for example. And also, I talked about what happens in elementary music and how it's different in there. Obviously, you know that. You see every student most of the time in the school building, and you don't give assessments the way other subject area teachers give. And so we talk about informal and formal assessment ideas and how to make them work for you and your classroom. So make sure you check that episode out if you are kind of needing new assessment ideas, or you're always second guessing yourself or wondering, am I doing this whole assessment thing right? This episode will give you some pointers and ideas to run with. And in the podcast episode, or like I said, just go search on the domesticmusician.com blog, there is a blog post all about assessment as well that goes right along with this episode. The next episode I want to talk about, and this one got a lot of downloads, is building a sense of belonging in the music room with Dr. Missy Strong, and it's episode 193. She is simply amazing. Love her perspective, her advice, her just words of encouragement all the time to music educators. She is amazing at what she does, both in the classroom and out of the classroom professionally. And so she and I had the honor of finally meeting in person when I went to Philly to the FABS conference there. She's just a delight. And so this episode, this has been long overdue of having her on the podcast, and she has an incredible podcast as well. And she talks about it in the episode. But this is all about helping students find a sense of belonging in the music room and what that means, and how teachers can develop an empathy-based approach with your students, and how you notice that it leads to connection, which leads to belonging for your students. I know for myself, when I was in the classroom, and also a lot of music teachers I work with and also talk to, classroom management is a huge struggle, and it seems like it's getting harder and harder every single day and every school year. And I love the way she talks about how building a sense of belonging helps with classroom management, and the way she kind of shifted her focus in her classroom to meet the needs of her students in a bigger and better way. And she talks about how her approach to teaching music changed, and the way she helps her students be their most musical selves by feeling like they belong. So it is just an incredible conversation. And the biggest takeaway I got from this episode, even for myself, is that it's okay to not stay in the same place you've always been in. Music teachers who have been teaching several years, or even if you've been teaching one, you have an idea of what you're going to do, how you're going to be teaching your students, but it's okay if that idea changes and shifts as you get going. And you're going to take some trainings that'll challenge your thinking about things, and it's going to make you go back to your classroom and want to change your approach. So she gives you kind of permission to do that and shares her story about how she did that. The next episode I want to talk about is episode 197, which is about bringing popular music into the music classroom. One of the questions I get asked, ironically, the most is, I want to do more popular music with my students, but how? So I thought, well, I've been there, done that a lot. This is something I loved doing with my students, and I love talking to teachers about. So I thought, well, I definitely need to record an episode about this. So when your students come into music class, a lot of times, and I had a conversation with Elizabeth Caldwell on the podcast before about this as well. A lot of times students will there's a disconnect between the music they listen to outside of the music room and what happens in the music classroom. There just is. Sometimes they can't form that connection. And so when you bring popular music into your classroom, first of all, you're going to see your students' faces light up. They're going to be excited. And they're also going to realize that, oh, music is music. Popular music and music, I'm using air quotes, you can't see me, that we listen to in the music classroom are all music. But when you bring music, popular music into your classroom, your students can still learn concepts around it. They can still discover steady beat. They can discover rhythm. They can discover melody, harmony, form. Everything else that you teach in the music room can be done with popular music. And I know all the questions you have around doing this, and you're like, well, how do I do it? How much of it do I do? What activities do I do with it? This episode dives into some things that I even did, and there is also a blog post that goes with it, and it gives just some strategic ideas about how you can do that in your classroom. So if you've been wanting to bring popular music in your classroom and you're just like, I'm not sure how, I'm not sure if I would even be doing it right, let me give you a quick hint. There is no right way to do it. So this episode is just going to basically help you get started if you are wanting to do that. Episode 199 is the next episode I want to mention, and it is 4 ways to reframe negative thoughts about teaching. Teaching is not always sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be some days you don't want to go into school. There's going to be some days you've planned the best lessons and sometimes the students just aren't responding well. There's going to be sometimes that you are just feeling a certain way because of how another teacher's making you feel. Maybe your administration's making you feel a certain way. Maybe you used to have a joy and passion for teaching music and lately it just feels like it's not there. Then this episode is definitely going to help you. Things can be hard and it can cause you to feel overwhelmed. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about, or I did talk about, remembering your why, knowing the hard days will come, being part of the solution, and identifying what's bringing you down mentally. If you're more of a reader instead of a listener, there is a blog post that goes along with this episode as well. The next episode I want to mention is episode 201, and this is musical play in the music room with Tina Arenas. Now, Tina and she actually, I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but she is growing a business around musical play. I'm so excited to see her work, and I actually got to be her coach. We worked together for 6 months to help get her ideas that are floating around in her head out and put it into the world. And so she has been putting more blog posts out there, and she has been a guest on several music education podcasts and a presenter. She's an amazing human being and amazing at what she does. And I'm just so excited. She's just a delight. And the way she shares about musical play is she just makes you excited about it. So it makes you want to do musical play with students. And so we are all creative people, and this is something she talks about in this episode. And part of reaching into that creativity is by using musical play. She talks about how there's behavioral type of musical play and then playful type of play. And students need to experience play. It allows them to learn, to find joy, and to reveal new parts of themselves they've never been able to experience before. So in this episode, you're going to learn what musical play is, different ways students can use their bodies to make music, how to make books playful and musical, and vocal exploration ideas. Then the next episode is episode 215. This is with Dennis Matthew, and he talks about songwriting and children's books in the music room. Dennis Matthew is a speech therapist who now has written so many books, and he travels around to be a guest author at schools, and he is also a musician. And so this was such a fun conversation for me because he talks about the fact that it's frustrating not being able to find songs you're wanting to use in your music room, and he encourages you, yes, even if you've never written a song before, to be creative to write your own music. And also, if you don't want to do that, how to use books that you already have read to your students before and how to make them musical. He is just such a delight, and his story's so cool because he never in a million years thought his work would take off like it has, but his books are just awesome. Throughout our conversation, we talk about how you can use your own creativity to write songs that your students need, and you can learn more about his work and the books he's written in this episode as well. So if you're wanting to use more children's books and to maybe do more songwriting or to figure out how to make the books you use with your students more musical, then this episode is definitely going to help you out with that. Then episode 202, Technology Tips and Tricks with Katie Wardrobe, is the next episode I want to mention. I did not put that in the right order, so it should have been after Tina Arenas if we're going in chronological order, but it's okay. We will all get over it. Okay, so Technology Tips and Tricks with Katie Wardrobe. If you do not know who Katie Wardrobe is, she is like the queen of music technology. So that's kind of what I've just dubbed her. But yes, that's all her whole business. Midnight Music is around music technology. She talks about how technology is something we all use in our lives, and it's something that you can definitely use with your students, even if you feel like you're not a techie person per se. Technology is something you definitely can bring into the music room. And so she talks about productivity tools, lesson planning ideas, Google Drive, how to make beautiful PDFs, creating slides, and student apps. And she also says if you feel stuck, start by getting comfortable with the things you already have to use at school first and then go from there. So she is absolutely pro at what she does and what she talks about. So definitely take a listen to this episode about music technology. The next episode I want to mention is 10 engaging ways to bring classical music into the music room, which is episode 216. This is another question I've been asked a lot about, where my students think classical music's boring, or I want to do a mixture of popular music, classical music, folk songs, and all the other music I do in my music room, but I don't know how. So I decided to talk about 10 ways I've done it with students, and that you can definitely either take these ideas as is or you can tweak them to make them your own. And it just talks about engaging activities to do with your students with classical music. And there is a blog post where I wrote out everything I say in this episode as well. And I also, in this episode, talk about different websites I really like that you can use with your students when it comes to classical music as well. So this is just another idea for you to use in your music room. When it comes to implementing ideas, you can definitely use classical music with. And the last episode I want to mention is actually the last episode I recorded of 2022, and it's called When You Feel Like Quitting Music Teaching, episode 224. This one has also already gotten a ton of downloads, and I know the reason why is because these thoughts are swirling around in a lot of your heads. Is if I wasn't teaching, what else would I do? Or I used to love teaching, but now I'm not sure anymore. Or I don't know if I want to quit, but I'm just not feeling the joy and passion for teaching music that I used to. So I recorded this episode because I wanted to give you some things to think about if this is something you're struggling with. So in this episode, I talk a lot about your viewpoints of teaching and your why behind teaching and what you would do if you quit, or things to consider if you want to keep going. So this episode goes into a lot of that, and there is a blog post that goes along with it as well. So there we go. Those were the 10 top downloaded episodes of 2022. And I had such an amazing year. I hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast this year. And even if you've listened to one episode and you've gotten something from it, I am so grateful. You are my reason. Continuing to support you, continuing to serve you, continuing to provide professional development that you can just carry along in your earbuds, whether you're working out in the car, listening while you're laying in bed, wherever you listen to the podcast. I am so grateful for you. Thank you to everyone that has shared the podcast or even a specific episode with a friend who needs it. Thank you to those of you who show up every week and leave a review or send me a message when an episode resonates with you. It means everything to me. So I appreciate you more than you know. I'm so excited to get more into this year, and I am really looking forward to what's coming in this year, and I can't wait to announce it soon. Have an amazing day and enjoy your week, and I will see you next week. Well, hey there. Thank you so much for listening into the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. There is an exclusive Facebook group just for listeners of this podcast and any elementary music teacher called the Elementary Music Teacher Community Facebook group. Come on over and join us there, where we have conversations around the podcast episodes and encourage each other each and every week. And also head to my website, thedomesticmusician.com. I have some free resources there that you can download to help you gain traction in your classroom today, as well as the blog and the membership site and all kinds of other goodies to help you keep going in your music teaching journey. I cannot wait to keep connecting with you and encouraging you and spurring you on in your journey of teaching elementary music. Hang in there, have an amazing week, and I will see you soon.